En verano de 2022, Netflix me invitó a visitar el set de la serie live action Avatar The Last Airbender o La Leyenda de Aang, adaptación live action de la serie animada que salió en 2005. La serie estaba terminando grabaciones en ese momento en Vancouver, Canadá, y yo quería verlo y saberlo todo. ¿Qué tan fiel es a la serie animada? ¿Qué cosas agregaron o quitaron? ¿Cómo fue crear a Appa y Momo para live action? ¿Y cómo le hicieron para recrear todos esos lugares lejanos e increíbles que vemos en la versión animada? Pero bueno, ahora sí, vamos al set. Primero llegamos a un set enorme con fondos verdes donde estaba Appa. Tienen esta especie de animatrónico con el que grabaron todas las escenas en las que van volando encima de él. En este lugar tenían también otras piezas de escenografía como estas, y luego llegó parte del elenco y pudimos verlos usando los trajes de la serie. Y después nos llevaron al Volume Stage, en donde estaban grabando escenas del final de temporada. Dentro de estas carpas blancas que ven a los lados están como estaciones de vestuario, maquillaje, utilería, entre otras cosas. Y ya estando dentro del set, nos sentaron detrás de estos monitores donde podíamos ver lo que estaban grabando en ese momento. Habían algunos detalles del set como estas columnas de la Nación del Fuego y un letrero de bienvenida que seguro usaron cuando empezó la producción porque se ve el nombre falso de producción que era Trade Winds. Me encontré por aquí esta caja de la nieve falsa que usan. Y después de esperar alrededor de 1 hora, empezaron a salir actores. Primero Gordon Cormier, quien interpreta a Aang, y luego salieron varios extras de la tribu Agua. Y ya que estaba vacío el set, me dieron permiso de subir y explorarlo un poco, y es muy difícil distinguir dónde empieza la pantalla. Es una sensación súper inmersiva, súper realista, y que realmente te hace sentir dentro de ese universo. Luego el showrunner y productor ejecutivo Albert Kim y el coproductor Kurt Williams nos contaron más acerca de la producción. Nos enseñaron varios escenarios diferentes en las pantallas, aunque el piso evidentemente no iba con esas escenas y rompía un poco la ilusión, así que no se fijen en eso. Y nos explicaron que en el techo hay sensores que captan el movimiento de la cámara para mostrar en pantalla lo que la cámara está viendo. También nos enseñaron varias imágenes de la serie. Y luego fuimos a visitar un set práctico que construyeron para uno de los últimos episodios en la tribu Agua del Norte. Pudimos subir y explorar y ver de cerca todo el nivel de detalle que tienen estos sets detrás. Y de vuelta en el set con Appa, estuvimos platicando en una mesa redonda con los creadores de la serie y con el elenco principal, y esto fue lo que me contaron.
Avatar The Last Airbender is effectively a travel show. Every episode, it seems, we're almost in a different biome.
Our first season mirrors the first season of the animated series. So we start in the Southern Water Tribe and end at the Northern Water Tribe. It's such a gigantic and epic and fantastical world.
I think right now, the total count is just under 100 different scenarios. A lot of those scenarios live within the same large environments. In the Northern Water Kingdom, there are about 20 different scenarios, and that could be time of day. The city's under siege, so it's consistently getting more and more destroyed.
Even in the first book of the animated series, you go from polar ice caps to forests, to desert environments, to these awe-inspiring cities. And in order to pull that off from a traditional perspective would have been not only incredibly hard logistically, just like enormously expensive, which is why we ended up embracing the virtual production technology. And with literally the push of a button, you can go from the South Pole to a forest to a city.
But it's so helpful. Being able to get into the scene where everything is on the ground and you can look at is immersive.
Can you explain us how that works? It's like a video game, right?
Exactly. So we're using game engines specifically for the real-time rendering component of it. It's not enough to just have static, beautiful imagery. We need to have some sense of depth, some sense of movement. So we get that through effectively parallax. So what we do is we track where all of the film cameras are at any given time, and then from their perspective, we're rendering exactly their correct view within this virtual world. A good way of thinking about it is kind of a portal. It's a window into this virtual environment that only ever makes sense from the camera's point of view.
Bueno, ¿y qué tan fans de Avatar son los actores del elenco?
Guess how many times I've seen it?
I've seen it 26 times.
26?
It's my favorite show.
I loved the show as a kid. It was shows like Avatar that got me into martial arts, because I've been into martial arts like my whole life ever since I was like 9. I remember like going in the pool and skimming the top of the water with like your arm and like trying to water bend and stuff.
Yes, 100%. And when it came back out on Netflix.
I watched it as a kid. It was also a big thing for my siblings, so it was like my siblings and then it went on to me. I love like the comics and I love like the theories. I'm in the middle of the Kyoshi book. I've just loved this universe for so long. It's just crazy that I'm sitting here right now, part of it.
También nos contaron sobre el duro entrenamiento por el que tuvieron que pasar los actores.
We had a 4-week boot camp before production began, and it involved everything from stunt training, which was, I'll tell you, it's intense. And it was also, frankly, really important for them to come together because it was the first time they'd met each other.
I went to this 6-week boot camp because you have to become a wushu master in 1 month. I go through my training, I learned bagua, and actually they taught us all 4 elements in that boot camp. We learned bagua for airbending and wushu for airbending. We learned Tai Chi and Wushu for waterbending. We had Shaolin Kung Fu and Wushu for firebending, and Hungar and Wushu for earthbending.
My martial arts has definitely helped make these firebending scenes look really cool. I think it's very personal for me as well to add my sort of flair to Zuko's fighting and things like that.
Because Sokka is supposed to be like a tactician and supposed to be like the mastermind of plans a lot of the times and isn't so good and a great engineer. He finds out he's not so much a warrior. They didn't want me to look like I could do crazy stuff. I have a world championship in weapons in Taekwondo. So a lot of it was trying to figure out how to make stuff not look so, it sounds really silly, like sharp or look like I don't know what I'm doing. So that was kind of my little niche of the training.
In the animated series, Sokka uses a boomerang as his main weapon. Do you use it too?
I do. I have it on me right now. I asked if I could have it on for this. I tried to use it as much as possible. I asked so many times, are we sure I can't throw my boomerang in this scene? It's almost like his little piece of home as well as with the war club, which I left over there, which his dad gave him.
How did you approach filming the bending effects? Is just CGI or also practical effects?
It's almost all CGI. It's almost all VFX. It's one of the first things we did. I mean, even before we wrote the stories, wrote the scripts, we did a VFX test to see how the bending would look, to make sure that we got that right. And I gotta tell you, it looks spectacular. There's certain things that are enhanced with practical effects, like air bending, for instance. Sometimes on set, we will have air blasters, just moving things around. I gotta tell you, air bending is the hardest one because you can't see air. You only see air through the way it interacts with other things. So a lot of times when we do air, it's gotta be with leaves or snow or smoke or his staff.
¿Y qué tan difícil ha sido adaptar esta serie live action? ¿Qué tuvieron que cambiar y qué mantuvieron igual?
First, there are the creative challenges, right? So creatively, you're taking a story that was originally told in 19 to 20 half-hour animated episodes. So we were developing a serialized narrative drama for 8 one-hour episodes. So it was a matter of pulling apart a lot of the threads, staying true to the spirit of the original, making sure we kept a lot of the big plot points and character moments, but then finding a way to reweave that all together into something that felt like it had some propulsion. Our biggest goal was to make sure that this felt authentic, both to the original story and the characters, as well as to the cultural influences that inspired it. It was that balancing act of making sure that it felt both familiar yet fresh.
For me, it was really about preserving kind of the soul of the show. There were a couple of moments where I felt like I really wanted the original show, the imagery of the original show to resonate. One of them was when two people are having opposing battles and you get the beams colliding in the middle. In the animated show, there was always that high wide shot where you saw the blue beam and the red beam kind of banging in the middle, and I replicated that.
I feel like the Omashu Zuko fight scene was lots of like action, creativity, like things going on, like
There's a favorite moment of mine in the opening credits of the original show is when Aang jumps on his air scooter. So I was trying to find a moment where we could make that happen. And in episode 2 in Kyoshi, there was the perfect opportunity because it's something that I remembered so vividly every time I watched the show, and it made me smile. And that's going to be a moment I think that the fans of the original show are going to see and say, Yes, we're in Avatar.
Otro tema importante que platicamos fue cómo adaptar a los personajes al mundo real.
It's less about plot lines and more about the character journeys. I think one of the things people loved about the original is how fully developed these characters were. We wanted to honor that, but there were also moments that were just sort of hinted at in the cartoon where we were like, oh, I wish I knew a little more about Zuko and Iroh's relationship, how it is that Sokka and his dad came to that relationship. And so those were the moments that we were fleshing out in the live action, stuff that made it feel a little more grounded emotionally and relatable.
You get more of his relationships, and I think you get a really good sense of who Sokka is in the animated series. I think that's what we tried to do with every character on this show. That was important, is to flesh out these characters and like who they are if they were like these real people. Like seeing what that looked like with my dad or my sister or Aang. For Katara, that was her mom.
I feel like it's as similar as it can get in a live action. But I mean, like, Aang in the cartoon is that kind of kid that's like, hi, I'm Aang! But no, you can't really do that in a live action. So I feel like, yes, I try to portray him as best I can. And I think I do a pretty good job.
I'm definitely not gonna copy the teen angst voice that everyone loves in Zuko. I've been doing my own thing. I think Zuko has one of the greatest character development arcs, not even just animation, but I think television as well. There's a lot of love for Zuko, and I think the time putting in, like watching the show, but also just making sure that I'm doing Zuko justice in our Netflix show, really making him the best version that he can be.
So plot-wise, I think fans will look at it and recognize a lot of familiar story elements from the first book. We couldn't get to all of them. I'm sure everyone has their favorite episodes and they'll be like, where did that go? But we had to go through this process where we chose the best stories to help us tell the best character journeys. Just as an example, we end up spending 2 episodes in the city of Omashu. In that time where we're there, we tell multiple stories that were told in the cartoon. And in the cartoon, they might not have taken place in Omashu, but those characters, we've transplanted them into Omashu, and it made sense from a character and thematic perspective to do so. The first season of the episode mirrors the first book of the animated series, but that didn't stop us from pulling elements from, say, later seasons into the first season. In the cartoon, Azula really doesn't make her appearance in the season 2. We pulled her up into season 1. Will the fans think that that's sacrilege? I don't know. I mean, it made sense for our storyline to have her here and balance out the story we were telling about Zuko and the Fire Nation.
Algo que nos dejaron claro es que planean profundizar en los personajes, en sus historias, relaciones y sobre todo en su lado emocional y en aquello que los distingue de los demás.
Every show that I work on is essentially the same. When I worked on Glee, it was the same as working on American Horror Story. I like to climb inside the heads of the characters and then find ways visually to depict the world as they experience it, because that's the way you give the audience a sense of how that character feels in that situation. So the introduction of the character was really important to me, that we get the sense of the tragedy and of the struggle of Zuko, that we get the nobility and the humor and the fun in Aang, that we feel, these characters for who they are.
She represents finding herself and being confident in herself to be who she wants to be. I feel so connected to her, especially after so long, being able to bring her to life. It feels like I was ready for this. I've gone through whatever I've gone through to get here. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. But it just means everything to me,
In the cartoon, Sokka is like the comic relief. How did you bring that element to your character?
As much as I could, trying to find the balance of this character that's so layered was interesting. He has all these emotional moments. He has the funny, but I was trying to bring the funny as much as I could to the table. We tried to find that happy medium of where that character lives.
I just sink into it. So when I do that, I am Aang. So I'm thinking, Zuko's coming for me. I need to kill Fire Lord Ozai and all these things, and that's all up there. So, yeah, I think that I get pretty deep into the character.
Una de las cosas que más curiosidad me daba era saber todo acerca del diseño de Appa, Momo y las demás criaturas de este universo. ¿Cuál es el proceso detrás de crearlas? ¿Serán efectos digitales o prácticos?
And I'm curious about Appa because, in the cartoon, he has like very human-like teeth. And it could look creepy because, it happened with the Sonic first design. So how are you going to make the design?
When we designed Appa, it was actually a real surprise to me because it started from like the skeleton and musculature up. Everything was like, there was periods of time where I was being asked to approve like Appa skeleton. I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at here. There are these, and they would go to real life bison as well as manatee because it's kind of a cross between the two. And then gradually we would grow out. And then in the final product, we would take a look at it and then we would tweak it. We would say like, okay, the teeth don't quite look right. All I can say is you got to take a look. It's a combination of science and instinct. Like a lot of it was driven by what would factually work, what would work in the real world. But at the same time, the final decision was like, well, does that look right? Then you just tweak it based on your gut instinct. So it's sort of a combination of the process.
The scenes that we film on Appa are really fun. It's kind of like a boat rocking, but we're harnessed into wherever we sit. So it's very safe.
Flying on Appa is so awesome. I put on my harness and I go up there and they attach me into him. So if I fell out, I'd just be hanging and chilling down there like, oh.
Talking about the creatures, we can see a practical Appa here, but the rest of them, Momo and all the other creatures, are they all digital?
Yes, they are all digital. That's, again, one of the limitations of the technology right now. Is doing very believable photorealistic animation live on the screens is still challenging. It's quite difficult to actually fully focus on a screen. So that's usually a shot that we would do in post-production.
El ver a los actores completamente caracterizados con el vestuario, maquillaje y peinados fue súper especial, pero quería saber un poco más acerca del proceso de cada uno para meterse en la piel de sus personajes.
Can you talk to us about the transformation for the arrows and shaving your head?
Oh yeah, every single morning I get my head shaved, and after that I go into the makeup trailer. And in there, it's like, when you go to a carnival and you get these sticky tattoos and you put it on, then you press it with the hot water and then you pull it off. They put a layer under, then they apply the tattoo, they put a layer of it on top, then they let it dry, they powder it, and then they put the spray. It's medical spray. So they put those over my tattoos so it doesn't just rub off.
I was a little taken aback, like in a good way, of course. My fan brain was just like going crazy because they would bring stuff out, like the necklace. Oh my God, when I saw the necklace, I nearly fainted.
We obviously went through like iterations of trying new stuff out. Like for instance, this is like rubber. At the beginning, this was metal, and that was very heavy. But this is like my war suit. This is probably the least worn costume that I have.
It's a 2-hour-long process. I think it's a rubber piece or plastic, something along those lines. And it is glued to my face. It pretty much covers from here and then all the way to my ear. And then they color over it and make it look gnarly. With Zuko, the scar is a huge part of his identity, at least at the start. With this scar, I think it also plays into how I play Zuko.
About the hairstyle, did you have to shave your head or is it a bowl cap?
This is 100% a real haircut. I live with this, it's like a diamond on top, like in the series, it's spot on. My hair actually isn't this long, like down to my neck. It's about like 4 inches long, I'd say. These are just extensions. If I had this haircut, I would be just as angry as Zuko, too.
Algo que se mencionó varias veces era la importancia que tenía para el equipo de producción el respetar y celebrar las culturas en las que se inspiró la serie original y plasmarlas en esta versión de una manera aún más auténtica.
We wanted to make sure that we were, like I say, authentic, not just to the original story and the characters, but the cultural influences that inspired them. We made sure that the Southern Water Tribe and the Northern Water Tribe felt like they were directly inspired by Inuit culture. Whether it was indigenous cultures or Asian cultures, we had parameters we were following. We wanted to make sure that The environments, whether they were the set design and the costumes to the makeup, all of that felt authentic and true. You know, Omashu in the cartoon is really based on South Asia. It's India, Pakistan, that area. So our version of Omashu very much reflects that.
How has it been to record with the older cast? Were you starstruck by anyone?
I freaked out when Danny Pudi was cast as Sai. I've been a Community fan forever, and now he's like in a scene, and not only in our show, but like the father figure guy that teaches him about engineering. Like that's a big part of my character. And then he super exceeded those expectations and was like the nicest, coolest, mentor-y, friendly guy on the planet. Our adult cast is serious, like not to be messed with. Like Ken, who's playing Zhao, is incredible. Paul, who is playing Iroh, is Iroh, is not even playing Iroh. DDK, I've gotten to, sit behind the camera a few times, so I was like, this is insane to like watch these like awesome actors that have worked at their craft for so long. Utkarsh is another guy who's playing Boomy. Like he was like, Boomy. He's like, oh my God, it's Boomy right there, what the heck? He's got the crazy beard and hair and everything. God, I don't want to leave anybody off this list, so sorry. But our everyone that has been cast in the show is serious.
Y finalmente, ¿qué espera el elenco que pase cuando se estrene esta serie?
I hope that people react the same way I've reacted to seeing everything. Like my inner fan cannot control itself. So I just hope that with people seeing this whole thing unveil, I hope they feel that same way and that we've done the original justice, because I feel that we have.
Obviously, I hope that we go into book 3 of the animated series. That's the ultimate goal. And there's actually a book 4 that was made into a comic that dives into Zuko looking for his mom, which I think would be super fun. He has his hair in that. He is the Fire Lord in that as well, which would be really interesting to see.
I hope to have some good old funny moments with Toph. I hope just a journal, for season 2. I hope for my character specifically, maybe not season 2, maybe 3, but to get my sword, that would be pretty dope. More of the really funny scenes and the scenes where I also get to just connect and have like really cool, beautiful, emotional moments would be dope.
Y eso fue todo de mi visita al set de Avatar, la leyenda de Aang, que se estrena este 22 de febrero en Netflix. Muchas gracias a Netflix por invitarme al set y gracias a ustedes por ver este video. Espero que lo hayan disfrutado tanto como yo disfruté el estar ahí y espero que se hayan sentido como si hubieran estado ahí conmigo. Recuerda suscribirte al canal, darle like al video, comentar y también puedes seguirme en redes sociales como Paola Del Castillo. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. ¡Adiós! ¡Mua!